Hi everyone, thanks very much for tuning in. So in this video I'm just going to run through with a few brief comments on a few recently watched movies. Now maybe you've seen some of these films, maybe you haven't, so please let me know. First up, I watched Jenny Agutter in the 1970 film I Start Counting. Now this is quite an interesting film. In the film she was probably around 17, 18 at the time, but playing a 15-year-old, a young girl who is kind of having a sexual awakening whilst feeling a bit of an attraction toward her much older foster brother, but also suspecting him possibly of being involved in some murders that have been going on in the town. So yeah, this is quite an unusual film. Nicely performed by Jenny Agutter, and also a friend that she has in the film played by Clara Sutcliffe, a very bubbly performance from her. But yeah, this is a slow-paced, unusual kind of film, muted colours which all look very good, and great locations in Bracknell in Berkshire. Quite interesting to see those in the 70s. But yeah, slowly paced, not particularly sexual, not particularly thrilling, but a very interesting film nonetheless, with a really nice performance from Jenny Agutter. And next up, Jenny Agutter again in a 1981 film called Amy, and this you can actually watch on the Disney Channel. Now Amy is a little bit of a dated film and perhaps a little bit problematic nowadays in terms of its treatment of learning impaired children, how it perceives those. But yeah, so this film was made, I guess, pretty much around the same time as when Jenny Agutter was going to appear in An American Werewolf in London. But in this film she's a much more sort of prim and proper kind of character. So she's playing a lady who's trying to escape from a troubled marriage. She goes to a school where she then agrees to a school hearing impaired children who also have learning difficulties. So yeah, this was not wholly successful, although Jenny does give a nice performance in this. It's quite unusual that her teaching methods for the children is that she doesn't actually speak sign language, but as long as you can watch her lips and feel the vibrations on her cheek, then she thinks that that will be good enough. So it's no wonder one of the children that takes a shining to her is smiling a lot, because why wouldn't you want to look at Jenny Agutter's lips and put your hand on her cheek? Yeah, this was an okay film, but yeah, like I say, it is dated and not entirely successful, but it has its charming moments. Next I watched The Camp on Blood Island from 1958 and from Hammer Films. Now whilst this perhaps is not quite as good as Yesterday's Enemy, which I think is the best of the Hammer war films, it is nonetheless very good indeed. The problem with it, of course, is that it does have inappropriate casting nowadays for the Japanese characters, but that aside, this is a really strong offering from Hammer Films about British prisoners of war who are in a Japanese internment camp at the end of the war, and they don't want to let the Japanese commander know that the war has actually just finished, because the commander there has already promised to kill everyone in the event of Japan having to surrender. So yeah, that's quite a tense situation there, and there's actually lots of gripping moments in this film. The lead performance here is Andre Morel, and this was just before he went on to be in the TV adaptation of Quatermass and The Pit, and he also starred in the Hammer film the following year or so as Dr. Watson in The Hound of the Baskervilles. But yeah, this was a really, really good film from Hammer. So like I say, you do have to kind of just grin and bear the inappropriate casting, particularly Michael Ripper as a Japanese driver. Michael Ripper is a regular in Hammer Films, but yeah, it's very noticeably odd, his appearance here. But that aside, like I say, this was a strong film from Hammer, and one which I thought was really good. Next up, from 1932, and it's a film that's in the Criterion Collection. It's directed by Dorothy Arzner. It is Merrily We Go to Hell. What a great title. Now this one has Sylvia Sidney as a society girl who gets sweet talked by an alcoholic writer, played by Frederick March, and they quickly marry against her father's wishes. The film then concerns their marriage and how her hopes of changing him to become a successful playwright are thwarted by his continued alcoholism. But yeah, this one has a very good script, nice performances from both Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March, and yeah, makes lots of comments about relationships and social mores of the times. So yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. Merrily We Go to Hell. I also watched from 1979, and it's a film by Joan Micklin Silver. It's in the Criterion collection as well. It is Chilly Scenes of Winter, also known as Head Over Heels. This is a great movie. Do not think that it's a rom-com. That's an inaccurate description. I have seen that description on Letterboxd and things like that, but that's a kind of an unfair kind of way of describing this. Really, I think you need to have a little bit of life experience behind you to fully appreciate this great movie about a character played by John Hurd, who is sort of drifting through life and becoming besotted with a woman who is going through some marital difficulties. Yeah, this is a really, really well written film from Joan Micklin Silver, adapting a novel by Anne Beattie. But the performances from John Hurd and Mary Beth Hurt in particular are just stunning. They have great chemistry together, such a fluid nature to their performances, and their situation is one which yeah, I think certain people will be able to empathize with this one. As well as these two great performances, you also have a really nice supporting cast that includes Peter Riegert and Griffin Dunne and the great Gloria Graham as well. So yeah, Chilly Scenes of Winter is an excellent film, very well written, and just beautifully performed. Please do check out the review from Roger Kirby on his channel, as he did a really nice review of this one a few weeks ago and goes into the film in more depth. Next, from 1975, and it's a British sex comedy. And not only that, it's a British sex comedy that's directed by Martin Campbell. Yes, the Martin Campbell that went on to direct Bond movies such as Casino Royale. Martin Campbell actually started his career with sex comedies, and this was his second. It was called Eskimo Nell, or as my magazine here shows, The Sexy Saga of Naughty Nell and Big Dick. And this was a family porno kung fu musical western. What the hell, I hear you say? Well, okay, I'll explain. Yeah, this is actually quite a fun little film. I definitely would not call it a great film, but it is kind of interesting. It's for those who are interested in sex comedies. There would be very little nudity and sex here to interest you. This is much more of a comedy kind of film, and a satire, if you like, on the film industry. It concerns some filmmakers who are trying to make a film, but the various investors each have different wants out of the film, if you like. So we've got the main producer who wants to make a porno film. We have another investor who has a partner who has a cleavage, but she also has singing skills and can do kung fu chops, and so he wants her in the film. And then we also have another investor who is homosexual and who wants the film to be a western with guys in tight jeans getting their bums smacked. All very bizarre stuff, but it is actually quite funny in parts, in a very kind of crude and lewd kind of way. So yeah, the cast includes Christopher Timothy as one of the filmmakers. So yeah, he used to star in the TV series All Creatures Great and Small. One of the producers here is played by Roy Kinnear. He plays a character called Bernard U. Murdoch, Bum Productions. And we also have Christopher Biggins, and who else? Oh yes, an actress, Katie Manning, who actually was in Doctor Who in the kind of Bill Pertwee years in the 70s. So yeah, this is, like I say, an unusual film for sure. Very little nudity in it actually. So like I say, it's much more of a sort of satire comedy, but it does have its moments. Not a great film, but a few laughs to be had. And next is a film from 1994, and I watched this one on Shudder, and it's called Mosquito. Now, I must say that this film went onto my watch list because I have a bit of a thing about mosquitoes. Back in the 90s, I was fortunate enough to be able to go on a long expedition through Africa, about 13,000 miles in 5-6 months. Here's a picture of me actually with some gorillas. Can you recognize that's me? But what I will say is that when I went on this trip, there are many things that you come across in Africa, including lots of wild animals. But the one thing that remains scary to me is mosquitoes, because we had a fear of malaria when we were traveling, and I did actually get to see a few of the people that I was traveling with suffer very badly from malaria actually. So the sound of a mosquito, that zzz near my ear, that for me is the scariest thing that there is. Not a lion's roar, but a zzz. I hate that sound. But nonetheless, I watched Mosquito, and thankfully there is not that sound, and this is just a fun practical effects horror movie. Now let's get it out of the way. It definitely does not have a particularly good script, and it does not have particularly good acting, although it does feature Gunnar Hansen in this film, who was Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he does actually get to wield a chainsaw in this one as well toward the end. But yeah, whilst this is not well acted and it's not well scripted, what it does have in spades is lots of human-sized mosquitoes, and these have all been built especially for the film, and they're very fun. So we do get several good scenes. We get a mosquito attack on some nude campers in a tent. We get mosquitoes attacking a camper van. There's a road chase that involves the mosquitoes there, and then this final attack on a house as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed all the practical effects in this, and at one point they literally are eye-popping. So yeah, this was good fun. I mean, it's in no way could you say it's a great film, but for sure this is a fun late night movie, and particularly if you enjoy the practical effects, really good for that side of things. And of course I'm mentioning this as well at the same time, just following on from on Tim Talks Talkies. He did a live stream with a whole group of people, and it was Bob's Blu-rays actually that picked out Mosquito as one of his choices for practical effects. Their whole live stream was on practical effects. No mention of Ray Harryhausen or anything like that, but it was interesting for me to see what these guys were talking about. They were going with sort of more recent films, if you like, and mainly horror related. But do check out that live stream if you have not already seen it. There's some quite fun films that come up throughout that conversation. And anyway, so sticking with Mosquito just for a moment, I thought, well, okay, I've had fun watching that. I looked up the director, Gary Jones, to see what else he had done, and I then followed it on with Crocodile 2 Swamp Thing, just to check what that was like, which came much later. He filmed that in 2002, but unfortunately no, this is not as good. But that being said, again, he does go for the practical effects. This one involves a very large crocodile that is hunting down people that have survived a plane crash, and these are bank robbers as well as the flight attendant and a couple of other people. Yeah, it's a kind of a slow-moving film here. They went to great trouble to actually build this huge crocodile, which is great to see. I'm glad that they did that, but the downside with that is that it's very slow-moving, and there's only so many times when you can show sort of someone just in its jaws going ah. So for the rest of the film they use CGI, and the CGI is pretty horrible, it must be said. But yeah, not a total disaster. There's still some fun to be had here, and there was an actress called Heidi Lenhart who was in a TV series called California Dreams. I don't know that series, but I quite liked her in this. So yeah, not as good as Mosquito, but it was okay. Maybe I will see some other Gary Jones films for their practical effects. Okay, so that's it from me, just a brief run through of a whole range of films there. Let me know what you think about that mixed bag. Please do join me again for some more movies, and I will see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.